Hello, we are going to start today with our first lesson of the semester, and I would like to take you to the place where we left off during the introduction. I want to show you the map of Western civilization. If you remember, we talked about how Western civilization started somewhere around here and then moved west. So today we are going to start looking at Western civilization from its origins. This is a close-up, and this is where we are going to be spending most of our time this semester. But I would like to show you the reason, one of the reasons why we start this semester with the Persian Empire and with the Jews. So I would like for you to look at Western civilization, and one of the first things that I think we should see that not many people are aware of is that Islamic civilization had a very strong influence on Western civilization. So we owe a great deal in culture, in mathematical advances to the Muslims, and we are going to be studying that during the semester. But let's look at now Western civilization, and let's go up to these two topics that we are going to be discussing today and this week. This is Judaism, and these are the Persians. And our semester begins with the study of the Persians and the Jews. And why is that? Well, Judaism is what gave us, Western civilization, monotheism. So Christianity is one of the three world religions that is monotheistic, which means believe in only one God. And that the root of that comes from Judaism. So that's one of the reasons why we study Judaism, because a great deal of our moral values and of course our religious beliefs come from Judaism. But then, why the Persians? What do we owe the Persians? Well, the Persians were a great civilization, and the Persians, who were very, very imperialistic and spread throughout a large part of the world, were at some point conquered by a Greek, somebody who was not really Greek, but thought of himself as Greek, and that was Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great, who claimed to be a Greek, went to Persia, admired the Persians, and adopted many of the features of Persian culture and Persian civilization. And because of that, there was a blending of the Greek and the Persian culture. So if you look at here, if you look at this chart, then you are going to see that the Persians gave a great deal of culture to the Greeks. And of course the Greeks gave some culture to the Persians. But then we have then a blending of the Persians and the Greeks. And then, some centuries later, came the Romans. And the Romans conquered Greece, and by doing that they adopted the culture that had already been blended of Persian and Greek. So the Romans then took over all this, and that's what we call the Greco-Roman culture. So let's stay here with the Romans for a second, and then remember that we talked about Judaism. Well, during the Roman times, a new religion was born, and that new religion was Christianity, which was born during the time of the Roman Empire. It's a Roman religion, but at the same time it's a religion that had its roots in Judaism, because if you remember, Jesus, his mother, his father, and all his disciples were Jews. So we have then a religion called Christianity that adopted features from Judaism and also from the Roman Empire and from the Greeks and the Persians. So Christianity then, the Christian civilization, adopted and received influences from all these things that you see in red. But then we have another group of people, which were the German tribes. They are called the Germanic tribes, and some people also call them the barbarians, because compared to the Romans, they were barbarians. But what happened to those barbarians? First of all, those barbarians invaded the Roman Empire, and by invading the Roman Empire, they also took over some of the features of the Roman Empire. And one of the features that they took was, ironically, Christianity, because the Romans had adopted Christianity. So here we have then that all these influences, all these groups, the Jews, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, all of them had a strong influence on Christianity, and then the Germanic tribes that converted to Christianity are the ones that became Western civilization. And that's our topic for this semester. So, because we need to look at the roots of Western civilization, we need to start with the Persians and the Jews, then we'll continue with the Greeks, with the Romans. Then, as we study the Romans, we'll talk about the origin of Christianity. We'll talk about how the Germanic tribes accepted Christianity and converted to Christianity. And then, at the fall of the Roman Empire, Western civilization, what we call Western civilization, began. So, this is then our topic for this semester. So what we are going to do now, I'm going to take you to our first lesson. So it's not that much in the book, it's only a few sections of the book in chapter 2, I believe. And so what we need to know about the Jews and the Persians? Well, very simply, what they gave Western civilization. So we'll begin with the Jews then. And what we are going to talk about the Jews? Well, we need to know that, and this is what the Hebrew Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, but in history this is called the Hebrew Bible because it's the Bible written by the Hebrews. What we know about the Hebrews is that they lived in this area. This is what the Bible says, although some archaeologists claim that that may not be true, but if we follow what the Bible says, then we have to accept that somewhere around here, in a place called Ur, somebody called Abraham lived, and that person or persons, because some people believe that Abraham is a generic name for a group of people. Abraham left and moved west and eventually arrived here. And all this place that is called the Fertile Crescent was very popular because of its name, because it was very, very fertile. And many groups wanted to live here. So when the Jews, led apparently by Abraham, arrived here, of course there were many other people here. The Philistines were there, the Phoenicians were there, and so there were many other people. They had to fight, and they eventually settled here. But that's not really what is significant historically for Western civilization. What is significant is that these people who lived there eventually settled here and lived amongst other people like the Phoenicians or the Philistines. They lived there and they began to develop some culture. At some point they were united into one kingdom, then they were separated into two, and eventually they left and they went to Egypt. They came back from Egypt. Some of you may know that from the books of Genesis or Exodus in the Old Testament, what we call Old Testament. But the reason why Israel is important for us is because it is Israel that gave Western civilization the moral values and the belief in only one God. And in this lesson, as you read the documents, as you read the textbook, as you watch the videos, then this is what we are going to be looking at. How is it that the Jews became monotheistic? Because they were not at the beginning, but they eventually became monotheistic. And then what laws did they follow? What was important for them? And then what happened when they did not follow the law and when they broke those laws? So we're going to study that in this lesson. And then after we study the significance of the Jews, we will start talking about the Persians. And those Persians, we're going to discuss in this lesson how they grew. Look at this. Look at the size of this huge empire. Here is where the Jews lived. And notice that the Jews were conquered because they were so little. They were so small that they were conquered by everyone. So they were conquered by all the different groups that arrived there, and they were conquered especially by the Assyrians that lived there, and they were not treated very well, and we are going to talk about that. Eventually the Persians took over, and the Persians were much nicer to the Jews. In fact, the Jews had been exiled. They had been taken to Babylon, and the Persian king Cyrus allowed them to come back. They came back to their land, and they lived there after that. Of course, they went to Egypt for a while. Well, all these people, the Persians who conquered all this huge land, this huge empire, they had some very nice qualities. They also had some not very nice, but they were imperialistic in the sense that they conquered the great empire, but they were also nice to the people. So we're going to be talking about how they managed to be so nice, at the same time how they managed to rule and to manage this huge land. But the most important thing that we're going to discuss, and this is something that many of the historians are not sure about, we are going to discuss the main religion that, after the Persians had been worshipping many gods and goddesses and the forces of nature, they eventually came back with only one God. They also were monotheistic. But what is interesting, and as I said, historians are not sure of how to take that. Many of the features that the religion of Zoroaster has are features that Christianity also has. And what is interesting is many of those features were not features that Judaism had. And this is what we are going to be looking at. So I'm going to ask you to read carefully the textbook, this section, and I'm going to ask you to watch the videos and maybe think about why is it that there are so many similarities between Christianity, which, as I said, was born during the time of the Roman Empire, and the Persian religion of Zoroaster that was born several centuries before. And this is one of those interesting historical questions that I'm going to leave you with. And with this, we finish the introduction to the lesson, and I'm going to ask you to now look at all the components of the lesson, and when you are ready, start taking a practice quiz, and then you may take the practice quiz again and again, and when you feel that you have mastered the lesson and you have mastered all the knowledge that you are supposed to have, then take the quiz for this lesson, quiz number 1. And with this, we close this introduction, and remember that if you have questions, I am only one email away. Thank you very much.